Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by Moo, an online print and design company that helps you stand out from the crowd. Moo creates premium quality, customizable business cards and promotional materials. Visit moo.com/twist for more details and to get 20% off your next order. And by Wistia. Take control of your video marketing with powerful tools and analytics built specifically for business. Go to wistia.com/twist to get your free Wistia account today. And by AWS Activate, the Amazon Web Services startup program. It's easy to start and scale your business with AWS. Visit aws.amazon.com/activate.
Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Startups. It's our news roundtable edition with Molly Wood of the New York Times and myself. We have a lot to talk about. Big week for Uber, a lot of up and downs there. And Bezos, Amazon, virtual reality, Jaunt, Oculus, a lot going on. It's going to be an amazing episode. Stick with us.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis, and this is This Week in Startups. It's the program where we talk about startup companies, technology, angel investing, all that kind of stuff. You can follow the show at TWiST Startups. I'm at Jason, and the show is at thisweekinstartups.com, and we're also on the Instagram at TWiST Startups. And every week we do a Tuesday show where we interview somebody. We just did some really great interviews with Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn and an angel investor. We had Jimmy Chamberlain from the Smashing Pumpkins on to talk about his new company. Just lots of great stuff in the archive. So go to thisweekinstartups.com and you'll see that. Today on the program, Benedict Evans couldn't make it. He has food poisoning, so we wish him well. And we're going to talk about all his great work on mobile research when we get him back on the program. But we have Molly Wood of the New York Times back on the program. How are you doing?
Great. I'm happy to be back.
How is the New York Times going?
The New York Times is, it's so nice for me because I'm insulated in San Francisco.
Right.
We do our little tech thing, and we're the Times is going great. But.
Yeah. And how has life changed as going from like a CNET reporter to the New York Times? Like, I'm like super taken by that, we came up together,
that
right?
Unexpected. We kind of did.
Yeah, and like you become a New York Times reporter. It's like, it's kind of like it's sort of the crown. Like it's the best thing you could do in journalism, and you're there.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
Has life changed? Like when you talk to subjects, do people like get on the phone quicker? And
I will say everyone returns my phone calls. It is amazing, and it makes it so easy to do my job, and it's delightful. It's probably made me a worse procrastinator than I used to be because I'm like, you know what? It's fine if I only have a couple hours to do the story because they're going to call me right back.
Exactly.
So I'm trying to keep a lid on that.
To temper that.
But the editorial rigor there it's great. It's wonderful to be a part of, and it makes me feel like that accountability. It hurts sometimes, but it's really good.
Yeah, you definitely have to up your game because the world is watching. And so this week, speaking of the world watching, a huge controversy in the tech space. And this one comes with a huge number of disclaimers that I have to start with.
Yes.
I mean, I'm so conflicted in this. It's the most ridiculous, most conflicting moment of my life.
I feel kind of bad about making you talk about it, but except not at all.
No, yeah. I mean, listen, let me explain to everybody the sort of how, before I even start talking about this, about how wound up this is, and you can feel free to interrupt me or ask me questions during it because now I'm the subject, I guess, in a way. I was one of the early investors in Uber. Everybody knows that. And I'm very old friends with Travis. When I was a journalist, I knew him from Scour and from Red Swoosh. I've just known him for 15 or 20 years. And he's a good friend of mine. That's why I invested in his company. So I'm also a loudmouth journalist or previous journalist, and now I host a show, and I also have this tendency to mix it up and talk about everything. So when this issue, and we'll get into the issues in a minute, when this issue came up about Uber, and when previous issues have gotten about Uber, I have to change how I operate normally in that anytime I, as an investor in a company, say something, it winds up in the New York Times or Bloomberg or CNBC because I'm affiliated with the company. Mm-hmm. And what people don't understand is I am a very minor sub 1% shareholder of Uber. So it's a meaningful position in a dollar number, of course, if it ever happens. But it's not actually life-changing money for me because I made money in other things. Putting all that aside, I can't speak for these companies. They have to speak for themselves. But it creates a massive dissonance with the fans of the show and the world in large, because they're like, Jason, you talk about everything and your trademark is being blunt and out there.
Well, and you tweet about Uber a lot. I mean, you talk about Uber, you talk about their business, and so it's sort of there's
stop
an
now.
expectation. Right, exactly. Like, don't stop now.
Right. And so, and part of my value as an angel investor, in fact, and I speak about it very plainly, is when I join the team, when I invest in your company, my job is to get the first 10,000, 100,000 people aware of your product, because I have the footprint, I have the platform. And I don't sell myself as an angel investor or that, but it's widely known that if I pick something, other investors might be interested, and it's certainly going to wind up on this program or at the launch festival, or I'm going to write about it possibly, because I'm passionate about what I do. Mm-hmm. So in this case, as in all cases, just so to tip you into how I actually approach this conflict or just sticky situation, whatever you want to call it, I actually give the founders the option: do you want me to comment or do you not? It's up to the founders. Do you want me to say anything or not? Or sometimes I'll say, do you mind if I talk about this, right? Because I don't want to be speaking for the company, especially if the company doesn't say anything. And then the New York Times is like, the company does not say anything, but investor Jason Calacanis, who's a loudmouth, said this, right? Like, it just
I'm pretty sure, just to be clear, we would never say that.
The New York Times wouldn't, but everybody else would. Yes, you would be nice to me, everybody else would.
The parenthetical would be implied.
Yes, it would be like,
at the time.
It's yeah, we understand he's a loudmouth. So anyway, I said to the company, like, is it okay if I engage this? Because, I don't want to cause problems. And sometimes I'll even engage it, like, if it's a serious situation, and say, I don't agree with this or whatever. But, obviously I want to just talk to the company a little bit about it. So
so you had that conversation?
Yeah, I just basically said, is it okay for me? Do you mind if I jump in? And they're like, feel free, And that's generally been Uber's approach, actually. They don't have anything to hide. They're just like, go for it, right? And actually, I think most companies are like that. But I still feel like if it was me and Roloff from Sequoia was like, I'm going to start commenting on Jason's company, I trust him. But I kind of would like to know that he's about to do that kind of thing, just so we can coordinate. What if because you know how journalists work sometimes. They'll ask the investors the same set of questions. They'll ask, the company questions. They'll ask some rank and file employee a question, and then they look for the deltas. And, hey, what's different about people's perspective here? And then that becomes the story. Investor said this person said that. So you want to speak with the United Voice. Anyway,
So what have you said? What have you said publicly? I've seen some of your tweets, but let's recap what you...
Yeah, so let me recap for the audience what's happened first, actually. I guess that might be a good place to start. So
good idea, the story.
Yes, yeah, the story. The lead. Getting back to that, there was some kind of a dinner, and Emil Michael, who is an executive at Uber, senior vice president, he's not like a nobody at the company, he's a senior person, was lamenting, according to the story in BuzzFeed, how journalists are just savaging the company or being super difficult, being super hard on the company. And he hypothesized, what if we hired a bunch of journalists for $1 million and investigated journalists, and put them under the same sort of scrutiny that I was put under, or we were put under, right? And I guess this falls into something called opposition research, which I'm not exactly familiar with what that is, but I guess that's what politicians do to each other when they dig up dirt and they follow you around.
You're not familiar with what that is? Companies do that kind of thing all the time.
I don't know that. I've never experienced a company doing that. I mean, I think maybe like a tobacco company or something like that. I'm talking about a Silicon Valley company.
Sure.
But opposition...
I mean, it's not dissimilar to competitive research, but yes, it is more commonly found in politics, and it is absolutely...
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of competitive research. I've actually never heard of...
Like looking into the personal lives of the opposition, that is definitely political territory, and it's not surprising, frankly, to hear that kind of talk come out of a company that just hired David Plouffe,
right? Who is a
former Obama administration.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
so
Political strategist.
It's pretty clear from the Ben Smith story, and then another story came out with somebody else who was there, who's friends with Emil, that it was a hypothetical situation. Right? He was sort of floating a hypothetical. That was people's interpretation of it. Of course, in all of this, threatening journalists or anybody is kind of it's not on the table. It's just not what we do in our industry here in technology. That is far into this industry. I would never endorse anything like that. I would never participate in anything like that. It's just not what you would do. And I think that's why he was blowing off steam, saying that at what was supposed to be an off-the-record dinner. All that being said, still unforgivable. Right? It's like you just don't say that kind of stuff. Now this, of course, and then the worst part about it is he brings up very specifically Sarah Lacey from Pando and says, what if we did that to her? Mm-hmm. And that's where like the thing goes supernova, because Pando has been the most vocal critic of everything they've done. And so there's a bunch of other stuff going on at the same time, which is there is a supposed God view where you can see people moving around in traffic.
Yeah.
And this makes it super scary because, oh my God, Uber knows people's location, and what if they misuse that data? And
this is where, let's be honest, the problem is, part of the problem is that Uber has lost the benefit of the doubt, because you have a long history of what I have publicly called mercenary behavior. And it starts with surge pricing during hurricanes, and it ends with God view. Yeah. And in between you have resistance to, handicap accessibility because they don't want to give up any data. And you've got, really aggressive, ruthless behavior. You have all those revelations about the competitive tactics used against Lyft, like hiring people to call for rides and then cancel them, taking money out of Lyft drivers. This is a company that is not, and this is the part that I think that I feel like as an investor, it's like, how do you deal with a company that seems that Peter Thiel called ethically flawed?
Right. And that's a perfect thing for me to do right after this commercial break. Love it. Wow. It's just the best question, and I will absolutely address it after I talk about Moo cards. It's so great. But anyway, if you're launching a business or meeting with potential investors, go to a networking event. Get Moo cards. Moo cards are amazing. You all know what they are because they're those beautiful mini cards, those little tiny cards that people give to each other. You can see it on my screen here if you guys want to pull it up. I've been using these for years. They're gorgeous. They have these beautiful Moo cases, if you haven't seen them, where you can put your cards in them. And it's incredibly affordable. They're like $20 to get a whole bunch of them. So when you have a bunch of employees at your company and you don't want to waste thousands of dollars on stationery and stuff, but you do want to spend tens of dollars or maybe low hundreds of dollars to get everything together, you want to go to moo.com. Everybody knows moo.com because they make beautiful products. They've been doing it for a long time. They use the best paper stocks. They feel great. And you can just do it on the site. Like they have a little card builder. So you can go to moo.com right now, build your cards, design your own, super easy, get the beautiful card cases and all that stuff. And they do tons of other things there. But they'll get it to you the next day. And they have amazing customer service. I highly endorse the product because I love it, and I've used it for many years. In fact, it's one of those things where startups aren't supposed to waste money. This is like one of those things that saves you a ton of money. And to save even more money, for 20% off your order, you can visit moo.com/twist. So for 20% off your order, you can go to moo.com/twist. And everybody say thank you at Moo for supporting at TWI Startups on your Twitter handle. If you're a super fan, let them know that you heard about it here and you appreciate their support. Thanks again to Moo. All right. So when we left, you were challenging me on the aggressive nature of the company.
I think the aggressive nature, let me be clear, from my perspective, the aggressive nature of the company is absolutely necessary in the business that they're in, and it is probably why they have been and will be successful regardless of how many of these PR flaps come on. What I want to know is sort of, is there a point at which a company is so ethically flawed that it becomes a problem for hiring and for for customer attention? Yeah,
and so what I'll say right off the bat is I don't think they're ethically flawed. And I don't think Travis is either. I've known the man for 15 years. He is a great person. He's actually very empathetic.
Did he call it Boober?
I think he joked, and that was not a great joke, right? And it's really an inappropriate joke to say, especially, when you're the leader of a very big company, right? Yeah. And unforgivable.
But why does that keep happening? Are they just not smart? Because I don't think that's true.
Okay, so I will tell you my perception of what's happened here. You have a company that has had to fight every day of its life for survival. Every time they launched in another city, they tried to stop them. They tried to ban it. They tried to ban innovation. It's like going up against, these corrupt, in some cases, backdoor dealing cities where they just want to stop everybody. And I don't think the company Uber could have ever worked without someone like Travis at the helm who can wake up every day and say, I'm going to fight to create this product in this market, because it has been so hard. I've watched it, the law, the legal issues and everything coming in. It's been an absolute war for that company since day one. Now, what happens when you're at war all this time? It builds a fighting culture in the company. The company's culture has been to survive for its very life, to fight, fight, fight. And in addition to that, this is the first company in Silicon Valley to really operate in the real world. It's not software in a screen. It's drivers on the street. So you add to that the fact that there's a whole nother set of problems that can happen, like car accidents or bad drivers or fights or all kinds of crazy stuff.
Or not insuring your drivers, right? Like
right.
You just
well, no, they're insured.
Piling up. Now they are.
Yeah.
For not that much.
Yeah. So what happens is you put all these things together, and then you add to it massive success, massive growth, unlike anything we've ever seen in Silicon Valley. And we've seen some things grow incredibly, but I don't actually – and this is going to be another sort of revelation as an angel investor. As an angel investor, you put money in, you have no control, you have sometimes no information rights, and you just sit back and, our job is to sort of get companies off the ground. But where they go is where they go. And we don't really have any control, power, or anything. I mean, I don't even technically have the ability to sell my shares. Like I would have to get permission to sell my shares, right? Like that's how, not that I would ever do it. I would never do it. I'm loyal to the company. And I'll tell you why. I think that the company has fought and fought and fought and fought. And that now the company needs to, and the management needs to just take a deep breath here and say, hey, we kind of have already won that set of battles. We got this to X hundred cities. We were able to raise the big money. We were able to make money, create all these jobs, create this great service that's changed cities, that in fact has all these really admirable features to it. Like it's much safer to be in an Uber than any other car. You know where the car is at all time. When you get in a cab, you don't know who the driver is. You know who the driver is. They know exactly where they picked you up. They know exactly where they took you. If they tried to take you around the long way around Paris and run up the meter, you would know immediately because you would get the email and you'd hit reply and say, they took me the long way, and they would credit your ride. If something's left in the car, you know who it is. Like all these great things people forget were the magic of Uber in the early days, right? There was this magical feeling about the company for a while. And now the magic has been replaced by, God, there's all these bad stories. Everybody's out for them. Every mistake they make is going to get magnified. And they're basically did no favor to themselves by then saying, yeah, we're going to just do something we're going to suggest something so incredibly stupid when we're in the middle of a huge fight and under a huge microscope. Right. That is like, just creates a firestorm. And the company now just needs to say, this was phase one of the company, and now we're going to move into phase two, and we're just going to stop trying to survive. We're just going to focus on making a great product and building a great culture. And and people want to know what I'm working on. That's what I'm working on with the company. And that's my role as an angel investor. I can't come in and fire anybody. I can't go in and be the CEO of the company. I can't speak for the company. But what I can do is say, and I can say it publicly, company needs to do better. Here's how they need to do better. And I am going to be very involved as much as I can to try to affect that change, right? And I don't really have I don't want to be the story, but people who watch this show have heard me for years talk about Uber and had Travis on, so I have an obligation to talk about it. And that's as honestly as I can put it. I don't know if that seems like I'm a bullshit artist or not.
Well, look, I think most of us don't think you're a bullshit artist, except that you are an investor, and you've obviously you've been an Uber booster, and I think that's why it is useful for me to get your perspective. Useful, hopefully for everybody to get your perspective. I mean, I think they don't do them. I am personally a lot more concerned and have had qualms as a user of Uber since surge pricing. I mean, they didn't do themselves any favor by having surge pricing at 5 times yesterday in San Francisco.
And that's a perfect example, I think, of the fighting nature of the company.
Yeah.
And them maybe not doing a great job and then doing a slightly better job and still some work to be done. You try to do an innovation, and they try to do it so that they can get more drivers on the road. And it's shocking to people because they've never experienced it. But if they were trying to get a hotel room during South by Southwest or a flight to, during Christmas.
But there's no transparency. See, this is what bugs me, right? It's that there's no transparency. There's like, we're doing it, and here's why. It's to get more drivers on the road, but you don't know that for sure because it feels really arbitrary. Like, you don't know. It's Tuesday, and it's kind of foggy, and for some reason, it's 2.5 times.
I mean, it generally, today, and you can be sure if it's raining or snowing, it's going to go up. Yeah.
Absolutely. But so there's that. Then there's the insurance question.
Let me tell you about that one.
Then there's the driver in New York who told me that when he started with Uber, when they first started, they took 5% of his pay, a 5% cut or something, and then it was a 10% cut, and then it was a 20% cut.
I think, they might have had some. I don't know the details on that.
Relatively significant increases, it sounds like. So for me, it's like I don't feel good as a customer, setting aside the whole dinner situation, which
Yeah, so let's go to that one in a second, because I don't want people to think I'm avoiding anything, because I'm not going to avoid anything on the topic. On those specific issues, surge pricing, when I talked to them about it, I said, I think you've got a great idea here, and it's incredibly confusing to people, and some people will never agree with it, just like some people do not agree with surge pricing on flights at Christmas and flights in hotels. But if you're convinced that this is the best way to grow the service and get drivers on the road, we'll know that pretty quickly. And drivers in New York, like during a snowstorm, like cab drivers do not go out because the cars move at 5 miles an hour. They get in accidents. It's miserable. And they make less money because they can only make money when they're going fast in the snow, right? They can only make money when they go fast. So it creates an unsafe environment. But if they were to get paid more money, then they are not rushing around, and they will come out during the snow because they're like, hey, I'm getting paid some hazard pay here, right? I'm getting paid a bonus to do this.
But are they also taking on a greater risk when they have not very much insurance?
Right. So then getting on to the insurance question, there are, and I don't know all the specifics on the insurance, I'll be totally honest, but I do think there is a portion of the business that is like a legacy kind of business where it's very clean and everybody understands what insurance is necessary, and that's like the Lincoln Town Car business. And then you have this ride-sharing business, and I think there are that's a new category, right? Ride-sharing, Lyft, Sidecar, and Uber X, right, which is a different category. And I think how much insurance coverage you have determines how much everybody makes and how low they can charge. So when you go back to that aggressive culture, that culture of winning, they're trying to figure out how do we get the price down as low as possible to get more people using the service, and how do we increase the number of visits. And if you get so good at that, eventually it can start working against you. And I think that's what we've seen. They're so aggressively trying to increase usage, lower prices, and still let the drivers make a better living than in taxis, which they do. And they iterate so fast, and it grows so fast, this leads to maybe the next phase of Uber, I'm going to call like sort of Uber 2.0. And now somebody's like, Sarah Lace is going to be like, Jason Calacanis is an operative for Palouf. Like, I've never met the guy. She said
Operation Clean Up Uber.
Right, exactly. Like literally, Sarah Lace is like, you're now being like, I don't know what word she uses, some like homeland word or some like scandal word of like what an operative is for Palouf. And I'm like, I've never met David Palouf. I don't even know who he is, actually. I mean, I know he worked for Clinton or Obama or something. I don't know anything about the man. I've never met him, never had a phone call with him. So that's an example where like, hey, maybe let's, instead of optimizing now any more than we have in that regard, let's start optimizing for making everybody happy, making the drivers happier, making the rides better. Maybe the new drivers get more training and they know the city better, because that was another problem. Is
maybe we don't give them subprime auto loans.
Yeah, we see that, and that's another issue where like,
I mean, it goes on. That's the thing. It just feels like it goes on and on.
It does, and I think some of that.
And is that a tech press bubble? It could be.
I think in some cases there's, in a lot of these cases it's 50% true, 50% false, 80%, 20%. In the case of the subprime loans, people who don't have credit histories get subprime loans. That's the only loan they can get. That exists in all parts of the world, right? Like
is Uber their cosigner? They have perfectly good credit.
I don't think Uber would have to then take on more of the share of the driver's revenue if they were going to do that, right? So all these things are levers. Now, here's what happens. If you get those drivers subprime loans, but you can say, hey, we know how much work we have for them, that can make the loan company, more apt to give it. They would not be able to get a car at all. Let's say they do that for a couple of years. They build their credit. They pay off the car properly. Now they're out of the subprime thing. So that could have easily had been spun as, or interpreted as, hey, yes, it's subprime, but I know that sounds scary and it's a bubble or whatever, but how many cars are we talking about? How many drivers are we talking about? And how much have they made in the last 50 weeks? And are we projecting that they're going to make that in the next 100? And if they are, that could be like actually a way for them to, build. And so I think the company is now in a place where it is going to be under massive scrutiny, and every single story, Pando, Valleywag, are going to, those publications will spin things in a horrible way, and then everybody else is just going to, like the sort of normal journalists, I'll call them, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, people who are not like trying to get page views and print headlines that are like truthy or, salacious or whatever, and link baiting. They're going to just be on they're going to be on it. They're going to be on the story, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, our perspective now is that we're on the story, but that the story is you guys are moving so fast that you're about to get in some big trouble. I mean, I think that's, to me, that is the real question is when does a company cross the point of no return? Because it is hard to see, that's great, that you're going to advise them toward Uber 2.0.
Yeah.
It is hard to see that happening because there's no, and look, I'm not one of those people that's like, somebody said something stupid, they need to get fired immediately.
Yeah.
But not outlining a response to those comments.
Yeah.
Other than that was not good.
Yeah. I mean,
isn't helping.
There were apologies, and I think.
But there were like apologies on Twitter.
Yeah, which
I feel like every Uber user should get an email. Actually, someone tweeted me the other day and said he went to cancel his account. He said I don't agree with the unethical behavior, so I want to cancel my account. And and sent me a screenshot of a response that he got from a customer service person that said, "We don't investigate journalists, and we never will."
Right.
Like, send that as an email.
It's not a bad suggestion.
I mean, that's just it seems to be compounded by some not great communication. Yeah. And by,
I mean, that's,
and frankly, these guys, they are really aggressive, right? Like, maybe you need to bring in a kinder, gentler somebody.
Yeah, I think. I think I'm 100% confident Travis will get it under control and will evolve. And you know what? We could have been having this conversation 5 years ago about Zuckerberg when they were doing their FTC fine and they got a $20 million fine. And they flipped all the privacy settings. And then we look today at Zuckerberg and we're like, yeah, there's not unethical behavior going on at Facebook. And Zuckerberg wakes up in the morning and gives a $25 million check to Ebola. And, young Mr. Zuck is now like, I think actually a good citizen and like doing good work.
Sure, although you still have lingering mistrust with a lot of users. So then when you try to roll out the Messenger thing, everybody hates you, right? Like it makes it harder. And I had the same conversation with a friend yesterday as I was advising her to maybe think twice about taking a job at Uber.
Yeah.
I also said, if you're going to go up against the taxi industry, you don't bring a knife to a gunfight. Like you got to have a guy like Travis. He's got to be somebody you never, ever want to hang out with in person, except for you apparently think that's not the case. Which is great.
I've hung out with him many times. He's
but it's like it's got to be the kind of company that you don't necessarily love, but that is tough enough to get it done. But but at some point, there's just a bad feeling. And I haven't canceled my account, but I haven't used them in a while because I just feel kind of yucky about it.
These are the things that, these are the things that should also be concerning, right? And so the aggressive nature of the company, that's what got them here. It's not what's going to get them here, right? So that's the 1.0, 2.0 story that I'm not messaging. This is what I truly feel in my heart. What got Travis and Uber to here is not going to get Travis and Uber to here. And I told that to him. Mm-hmm. And I said, Travis, this is what will get you to the next step. And he, I'm not going to get into all my discussions with the person because it's private, but I do think he will absolutely get there. Now,
all that said, I think they're going to be fine. Just to be clear.
Well, I mean, listen, nothing's guaranteed in this life.
I mean, they're going to be fine unless they really can't hire.
Yeah.
And unless users in mass numbers.
And I think this is like a great, a great thing for the company to focus on, which is we need to make sure the team at Uber, who work every day really hard to make that service work, to get people where they want to go, to create those jobs, to create thousands of jobs for vets, 5,000 and going to 50,000, like so many great initiatives going on, so many people working hard. We can't have this type of brouhaha, kerfluffle, kind of stuff overshadow the overarching mission and the opportunity. So we have to be absolutely vigilant to get this stuff just absolutely to zero. Mm-hmm. There cannot be any fighting with the press. There cannot be any aggressiveness, in the culture of the company other than aggressively making the product better. We have to aggressively make the product better.
Right.
Let's get everybody focused on that. And in truth, that's 90% of the focus, and there's 10% over here, which is the battling. And we just have to, quietly wind that down and get everybody on the same page. When we get back, I want to talk about the actual issue, which is journalists and this contentious thing, because I think there's also something there, which actually the New York Times went through with Elon Musk and that whole review prior to your time. I don't know if you remember when they did a review of the Model S, and the guy fudged the data a little bit, and the ombudsman came out and said, the data was not perfect. We're sorry. Anyway, when we get back, I want to talk about
is that why he won't call me back?
Perhaps.
I was not there. That was not my fault,
It's
Elon.
not my fault.
We're cool, buddy.
All right, when we get commercial back, we'll talk a little bit about just how the press the link baiting press. I'm going to make two categories of press. How the press, link baiting press, and companies should operate going forward. And let me just take a moment to thank Wistia. Listen, there's tons of free services out there for video. I choose to use Wistia for all of my sites, for all of my videos, so that I have complete control over them, and there's not all kinds of ads and pop-ups to promote other channels and other people's videos at the end, in the middle, and the beginning. I want to have a very clean, beautiful experience for all of you when you watch it. And by the way, I get to do really cool things in that video with Wistia's technology, like I get incredible analytics, and I can see very detailed information about who's watching the videos and how long they're watching for, all this great stuff that helps us make the show better, right? Additionally, we can see, we can put a little box up that says, hey, would you like to sign up for our email list and know about who's on the next episode and all these other things? Every day we get dozens of emails. Every week we get hundreds of emails. Every year we get thousands of emails that way. You can't do that with something like YouTube or Vimeo or the other products, because those products are trying to capture all those users and all that information for their ad network and for their uses. Wistia is for professionals, for businesses who want to have a clean experience that's completely white labeled for themselves. They've got over 50,000 customers, MailChimp, Moz, Blank Label, and of course us. Amazing analytics, ability to capture the emails, and lots of other important stuff there. In fact, we did a really cool thing. Anybody who came and paid for a ticket to the Scale event, we gave them access to the 54 videos that were ranked by score. And we started releasing them, 1 through 15 already released, based on the score of them. And we said, hey, how do we give these only to the people who actually paid for tickets, so that, hey, all those great growth techniques don't get shared with everybody, because then it negates the value of the technique, just with the people who came and paid. So we gave all those videos, and people are watching them and getting huge value, all through the system by putting in their email, giving them a login. So you can do that sort of like video locker kind of thing. And what was interesting is they created an opportunity for our company. A bunch of people who didn't pay to come to the event then said, hey, can I get those videos? And we said, sure, pay this amount and you can go get the videos. So now we found a secondary way to make money off the conference, which is sell the videos very easily by putting them on Wistia and charging people for access to them. And that allows us to make more videos, right? So it's a really cool service. No credit card is required, and your first 3 videos are free. Go ahead and thank @Wistia on your Twitter handle. All right, so just onto the issue of, I wonder what your thoughts are, being a career journalist who's been in the space now for a long time at different publications, about the nature of journalism and how link baiting and, let's say, putting a lie in a headline or a misrepresentation makes you win, and putting the truth makes you lose the battle for traffic, and how pushing a story maybe before the people have a chance to respond, or it's been checked or fact-checked, leads to more that what they call process journalism. I think TechCrunch tried to go with this whole process journalism thing, which is we found out that, there's this problem at your company. So instead of calling you and talking to you about it and getting your comment, we publish it so we get more people talking about it, and we get more page views, and then you have to do the denial.
Right.
And it's that was, I think a very deliberate technique by Mike Arrington when he was there, which was we're just going to publish, create a huge storm, and then we'll just keep updating the post, which was brilliant in a way for getting traffic, but it also felt like it wasn't real journalism. I wonder what your thoughts are on that, because you don't have to compete in a way, but you do, I guess.
Well, I suppose journalistically, you could argue that the tactics employed by Uber to get ahead in the ride-sharing space and in the transportation space, and that aggressive and sometimes not entirely savory behavior, is echoed in all kinds of fields.
Right. Perfect.
So I think what you're seeing is the exact same behavior.
Yes.
In some ways, on both sides of the aisle.
Right.
And what you start to ask yourself is this who you have to be?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Is this who you have to be to succeed? Because I'm sure that the Times asks itself those questions. Everybody wants to know. The last time I was on the show, I think I was asked about BuzzFeed.
Right.
And how do you continue to build traffic like that? And is that a lasting method for building audience and building traffic? And we are still in the middle of determining that.
Right.
But I think that every journalist and probably every taxi driver and maybe even every human ask themselves sometimes, do I have to be an asshole to get it done?
Right. And I think that's it definitely is, having been on both sides of this. I've written things that I think maybe are a little aggressive. In some cases, I don't know if I'm a big regret guy, but maybe 1 or 2 things I wrote that I was maybe I could have said that better. Got a little too personal.
That time you yelled at me that one time.
I can never you. Actually, I could tell you very specifically. The one thing I did that I regret was I talked about the, you know how like the sort of Asperger's kind of like, you know, thing they joke about on Silicon Valley, this TV show, like single-mindedness and, you know, not ability to just run over people, like no empathy kind of thing. I actually like said that about one executive, and I said Asperger's like, you know, like approach to this. And I look back on it, like I was like, in my mind, I thought I was describing the behavior of the company and like this single-mindedness of like not thinking about the customer. And it was, I think, maybe a little too close to home, and people were like, you're diagnosing a person, and maybe you're diagnosing a person correctly, even worse. And I was like, I don't want to be that person, right?
Right.
Like, that'd be like me being like, yeah, you're handicapped in some way. I'm like going to point it out. You know, like it's not nice.
Yeah.
And it's not honest or whatever. So it just feels to me like the press that's winning are the ones who are, you know, making this stuff explosive and ridiculous, which is what, you know, I was talking to Sarah Lacey and Paul Carr, who, by the way, I called both of them. They were friends of mine, I think. I don't think we're friends anymore after this whole thing. But I called both of them, you know, immediately after this stuff happened and tried to talk to both of them and had a productive conversation, I think, with Sarah and an unproductive one with Paul. But I was like, you're saying you need private security right now, and you're going on television and saying you need private security. And then the person on TV was like, wait, there has been a physical threat to your life? And then Sarah was like, no, there hasn't been a physical threat, but I don't put that past them. And I was like, I kind of think you're now milking this. Like, you're hired as a security guard because of this hypothetical conversation, and then, like, the person on TV actually kind of called her out on it. I think there's this, like, let's just fan the flames of everything to a point of illogicalness to get the page views.
Well, there's this trend on you and I are going to have a talk later about the exchange that we had back in the day, because you, who I really do love and respect personally, are a pretty aggressive dude.
I was when I was younger,
Yeah, absolutely. And in the Weblogs Inc. days, like, I think you
I was a pit bull.
Known for...
I was a pit bull.
Exactly. Like, you have a reputation for those kinds of tactics, for being a big, you know, loud badass to get that kind of attention. And so I think you know how it works. Yeah. And I think you know what the limits can or should be. Yeah. You know, I mean, we are absolutely seeing there are a couple things at play here. One is the nature of internet conversations. It's something that I like to call the literal net, where everything there is no such thing as a joke anymore. There's no such thing as an innocent joke or an innocent comment. Right. Especially not when you've completely lost the benefit of the doubt of everyone around you with a long history of kind of being a jerk. So what happens is when you combine the literal net with personality-driven journalism, with a need for page views, and sort of the relentlessness of the news cycle and how loud you have to be to get that attention, you sometimes get stories that might have never been a story at all. Right. But then end up being the one that everybody's chasing.
And they fill the whole space, right?
And they fill the whole space.
That's going to be the next 3 days of our lives, and it's just going to be huge.
And on the one hand, you feel like that's ridiculous and that shouldn't happen, and someone should be able to make a comment at a dinner party when they're a little drunk. But the fact is, that's not the world we live in anymore. And if you do make that comment, and you're you just have to be a smarter senior executive. Unfortunately, it means you can never have a good conversation with anybody.
I mean, you can have your most trusted friends, but I mean, it is true, like, you know, like you cannot joke, period, right? Like, it's just, you have to assume everything is recorded, everything's going to be played back 1,000 times. Your worst moment is going to be your featured moment.
And that someone's going to take it badly, that somehow it will not come out as you intended. Right. And look, I'm not letting this guy off the hook. I don't. No. However, it appears to me that this was a conversation between a few people that we can't verify.
Right. Well, a couple of people have verified the nature of it. But
they have verified the nature of it, but we don't know. Yeah. We don't know whether it was hypothetical or not. We don't know how it was delivered.
Two people
said it was hypothetical.
The journalist said it's hypothetical, I think, and then one of his friends who was there says it's hypothetical.
So. Right. So we've had that, and frankly, you know, if I were at the table, I would assume it was a hypothetical, and I would be like, "Listen, you're a bombastic jerk because y'all are, because apparently that's just Uber's jam." Yeah. But I don't really think you're going to do this. Right. And I also work at an organization where journalists have a real fear of being kidnapped, tortured, or beheaded.
Right, so it kind of diminishes it, right? Like,
so frankly, the 42 journalists have been killed so far working in 2014. Like, to me...
2014.
In 2014.
It's amazing.
42. And that to me, is valuable perspective on what really happens in the world when you investigate journalists.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like in a very different world from the one that we are blessed enough to live in. Yeah, covering
we're
the tech
debating
industry.
Features of products and everything.
Yeah.
All right, listen. It's 40 minutes on the subject, which is perhaps an appropriate amount of time. I don't know. I think it's a very interesting discussion.
Yeah,
it might be the appropriate amount of time.
I've been talking about it all week. I'll tell you that.
I mean, this is the topic of the week, and I'm not going to shy away from it. But I'm also at some point going to kind of move on from this, just so everybody knows. I think that this might be the point where
the news cycle will too.
Yeah, I think specifically me being involved in the Uber public side of this, I'm gonna kind of shut that down, and it's gonna be me working on the quiet side and which has kind of actually been 90% of my effort is hey, let's talk about these issues. Let's work on a plan to feature the good stuff we're doing.
But I do want to say thank you. I'm super impressed with how willing you are to be open and have this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, and
I'm over it too. We talked it out.
I was gonna start going on television too, if they wanted me to, or if they wanted me to be on the radio. I'll talk about it because I do think that, there's an honest discussion to be had about the impact, putting Uber aside, the impact of high growth startups on our lives, the culture at those startups, the culture of the press, the literal net, all of these things. It is what we're going to be dealing with for the next 10 years. There are going to be things that Google does, that Facebook does, in terms of, highly impacting society. And we see with wearables, and we see with location data. I mean, there are a great many things to be validly discussed. And I think a constructive discussion of them to make the companies better and to the companies to understand where the world wants them to go. Because that is, I think, the tragedy that occurs sometimes is Facebook was doing great. They didn't need to do Beacon, right? Or maybe I was doing great work on Engadget and other things, and I didn't need to pick on CNET journalists unfairly, which, probably did. Definitely did. But anyway, it was just, at that point, it was just...
I accept your apology.
No, literally, when I went
it was your thing. It was your baby.
I literally, and talking about fighting attitude, I was literally in a battle with Engadget to get credit from publications that wouldn't link to us and they would take our scoop. So I was just constantly fighting, to try to survive, get the blog published. But I hope that we can have more of those discussions, and I hope that we can have discussions that are not polarized to get page views and also not, swept under the rug to make them go away to increase market share. These companies are going to, have a profound impact on our lives. We have to have really productive dialogues with them. If there's a productive dialogue to be had about surge pricing, insurance, privacy settings on Facebook, location settings on Instagram, or whatever other Foursquare, we need to be able to have these things, right? And the polarization then just whips the public into this frenzy where they don't actually know what's going on anymore, and it's massively complex issues. I mean,
yeah.
They're nuanced issues.
Totally agree. I sometimes feel like conversation on the internet is incapable of nuance and subtlety, but I think we've done a pretty good job.
There we go. All right. So let's talk about other things in the news. You had a good story about Bezos. Was that your story or no?
I didn't write it, no.
You didn't write it. You picked the story.
Yes.
So Bezos is making his mark on the Washington Post with the Kindle app. Explain how.
So this new app will actually give you the Washington Post for free if you are an owner of certain Amazon Kindle tablets. And it's the first kind of formal collaboration between the two, between Amazon and the Washington Post, since, of course, Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post. And I am fascinated and a little uneasy about this idea of kind of device-specific content, because I think we are about to see a pretty serious escalation in platform wars between Amazon, Google, and Apple.
Right.
And so I worry that the device-specific platform content could start to wiggle its way into device-exclusive content. Which makes me uncomfortable. Or that Amazon or Apple or Google could say, okay, well, we don't want the Washington Post on our devices. That is very unlikely, but it is looming. Yeah. And it just makes me a little uneasy, too, in terms of the practice of journalism. Amazon's a very influential company.
Very powerful company.
The highest respect for, Cecilia Kang, who does incredible tech policy reporting there. But how can you report on Amazon within that within that organization, within that journalistic organization,
Yeah.
if you're then tied into the device, if you're tied into the sales and marketing of the devices that Amazon makes and sells, that to me is a line that makes me a little uncomfortable.
There's there's a deep association now that will occur between the two brands, which then will put in the minds of consumers that it's Jeff Bezos presents the Washington Post, and the Kindle Fire is the greatest device. I mean, if somebody does a great review of the Kindle Fire or the Fire Phone or Amazon Prime in the Washington Post, it absolutely would be assumed by anybody who knew the ownership structure that that was tainted.
Of course. Even a negative one will start to be perceived as an overcorrection. I mean, you start to just have, like,
your
you start
mind
to have
wanders.
this bizarre, your mind wanders. Yeah. You can't focus on the content anymore. And it's not even necessarily about the review of the device. It's that Amazon touches so many parts of our culture. Like you said, these high growth businesses. I mean, from hosting so many companies to potentially flying drones all around to the actual sales and retail. It's just a very interesting
What I do like about the bundling would be if the Kindle said to the New York Times, or what if Amazon said to people in Los Angeles or San Diego, hey, we're going to give you this local pub if you're in that area when you buy the device for the first 2 years for free. So if you buy a Kindle and you live in these zip codes, you get the local paper for free. And that subscription would normally be $30 a year. We're going to include it. And then they go to the local paper and say, we'll give you $5 each time we do this. So the paper is getting $5 in found money or something like that. So it's not the 25, but they don't have to like actually close the sale. And wow, that could be amazing. It's almost like baking a royalty into the device for the local publications. Could actually solve local journalism. So there's an opportunity there. But yeah, I'm a little concerned.
And that's like a really great idea. That doesn't tie, because you're not owned by the company.
You're not owned by the company.
But you're owned by the company. But yeah, like there's something about it that just feels a little unseemly, especially when I read that they're making like post employees use Kindle Fires. Maybe they're not making them, but they said it's evident. There's these Kindle Fires in the newsroom. They're starting to, and it's sort of just like, oh, I don't know. There's something about it that I don't like. Because the Post has such a storied history.
If there was an advantage to be had in the journalism, that could be interesting. Like we could reach more people, right? So when you turn, if they made the screensaver on all the devices by default, the Washington Post headlines, like great, we're getting out to more people,
right?
But
certainly every newspaper wants to know how to make more money. So but it's like then does the Times get in bed with Apple? I don't know what happens from here.
Google actually was going to buy the New York Times. This is something I know for a fact that they explored it.
What?
Yeah, back in the day. I don't know if that's ever went public, but I do know this for a fact actually that there was an exploration.
Wait, I have to write an explosive headline about that.
Yeah, you can write an explosion. Calacanis says this is years ago, but when they were in trouble, there was a discussion about it there. Amongst the top leadership and putting it in a trust.
Right. Which is saying that happens. That's what the Guardian is, right? The Guardian's
a trust, yes.
Yeah.
And I so maybe they did take it from that kind of concept, which is there's a trust, there's a bunch of trustees, and the owners can't get to it. But I think the idea might have been floated because somebody was like, hey, it's going to get bought by somebody outside the country, like, the Mexican billionaire, what's his name?
Right, Carlos Slim.
Carlos Slim, he's still an owner in it, I guess, or whatever. So I think there might have been some, like, we can't have it go down, it's an important public trust in a way, and maybe foreign ownership would screw it up or whatever, which it hasn't, but that was the concept, was to put it in trust and stuff like that. But it does seem these companies are going to get more comfortable with content.
Really have to talk about this after the show, by the way, because that's a really big deal.
Yeah.
Pretty big bombshell you just dropped there.
It was just a discussion. I mean, I know it from the top people at the company. I wouldn't say it's not from Larry and Sergey, but just people right under them years ago were looking at it, considering it. Like, they asked me, is there a way to do it? What do you think of this? And I was like, yeah, I think that's just weird. Because then the same exact issue you had, which is like, if Google's the company of the future, and of 100 tech stories, 15 or 50 mention Google, then what happens, And then when John Markoff or you or whoever was at it, at the time, like has to interview Larry and Sergey, it's just the whole thing's tainted because they put up the money for it. But they do things, interestingly, Google, where they'll put up $500 million in a bond, just them using their big stack of money for solar So they're actually like a bond issuer, like a government. Like we think solar just should be in the world. We're not necessarily going to use this solar, but we'll issue bonds for solar, so there's more power in the world. So they've done a bunch of bond offerings like that for solar energy. Okay, let's move on to virtual reality. It looks like the Oculus SDK is available now for December, and it's $249 for a headset with Bluetooth, gamepad, and $149 for the headset alone. That wasn't the first Oculus Rift much more than that, like $500 or something. And it looks like it's going to be produced by Samsung. Here's the picture of it.
Well, yeah, this is different too. This is the Samsung Gear VR Innovator Edition, which is based on the Oculus Rift technology.
I got it.
But it's issued by Samsung, and it only works with the Note 4 phone. It's basically an accessory for that phone.
Got it.
Yeah, so different from the SDK, although it points to the potential partnersents that Oculus could make with these companies. But yeah, this is a Samsung product.
This is a Samsung product.
But it's powered by Oculus.
And when does the actual Oculus 2, do you know when the Oculus 2 comes out? Anybody? Producer Jackie? Because that's the one, I was like sort of getting into it on Twitter, speaking of getting into it, with my friend Chris Dixon, who's been on the program, because Andreessen Horowitz is an investor, and then sold Oculus to Facebook, right? Like, Mark Andreessen and Chris put like $100 million in Oculus, and like literally 6 months or 12 months later, I think it gets bought for a couple $1 billion. Great return for them and their LPs, but also like a little bit of a head scratcher, like virtual reality, Facebook. And I put on the first version of it, and I was not impressed.
I was nauseous when I tried
I was nauseous.
I tried the Gear VR.
It was just like the whole thing. I was like, I see absolutely no use case for this. But then Chris keeps telling me, you have to see number 2. You haven't put on number 2 yet. Yeah, so we have to get.
As far as I know, it's complete vapor. We've seen nothing, right? The Samsung is the closest we've seen to a shipping product related to Oculus since they went into the Facebook void.
Yeah. So the second edition is the one that everybody is saying is just completely mind blowing, because they figured out like how to look around a corner when you pull your hand up or you're moving. Like it gets rid of that vertigo or nauseousness. But do you think, Molly, there is a use case for virtual reality? And if so, what is it other than maybe gaming?
I think it's gaming and maybe movies.
Movies.
And I think that I actually think that there's a really interesting, there's industrial use cases that are unrelated to the consumer.
Of course.
Like there's medical, obviously. And there's even.
People always go to medical, yeah.
Yeah, of course. But there's
Glass,
like meetings too. I mean, have you seen the Beam robot?
Yes.
So that thing is awesome. You
Right.
sort of inhabit this thing, like in that Wesley Snipes movie.
Yeah. Virtue.
From back in the day.
Yeah,
the cop one. It's
Yeah.
like the movie that all modern technology sprung from. But anyway, you sort of inhabit this device, and you can move
around the office.
You control the robot remotely. You move around the office. You look at things. I could actually see that being a use case for VR.
Right.
To be virtually present in an office or in a factory that you want to check out.
So you're home and you put the goggles on, but it's not like every day you do that. You might do it because
you just do it for a meeting. Maybe.
Yeah, I want to be in a meeting, and I want to be able to look around the room and check out the whiteboard. And
right. Or maybe I want to check out the supply shelves or something at an actual an industrial production. I mean, this is, it's far afield, but I think in terms of the consumer applications, they are pretty limited to gaming and maybe entertainment.
Right.
Movies
Porn
and that kind of thing.
Porn has been brought up a bunch of times.
Porn is
Adult
obviously.
stuff always gets pulled into the mix.
I mean,
that's the thing I'm wondering
really
about
likely, but like, what if I could have like a virtual reality book? You know how you read those books and you just wish I could be part of that? Like, I wish I could be in Lord of the Rings. Like, that would be amazing if they made a virtual version of Lord of the Rings and I could play as that character. I mean, I think that the gaming, we say just gaming, but the gaming potential is pretty awesome. Like,
yeah, like Minecraft
that.
or whatever, or World of Warcraft, or previously Second Life. There's some, maybe The Palace was another one. Like Avatar Chat was a precursor to all this. So I guess we could be walking around in a virtual environment, talking to each other instead of the real world. And yeah.
I think that that's somewhat powerful as the next generation chat room, but I think it's going to be pretty limited at first. And those headsets are heavy and uncomfortable right now.
Yeah, that's the thing I always find about it. It's almost like talking to your computer, when you talk about Siri and these other things. It's like everybody's had Siri for a long time now. Nobody uses it.
Still doesn't work great.
But it doesn't work great, but it also, you kind of feel stupid talking to a computer. That's what I think is the big holdback in a lot of these things.
I don't. I have no shame in my game. I talk to my computer all the time.
You do?
Oh my God, I dictate texts and emails in Target.
What do you use, Dragon Dictate or just Siri?
No, I find that the Google one works a lot better. So I use my Android phone for most of my dictation, and sometimes I use Siri for stuff.
So let me ask you weird question.
I'm not going to wear the headphones in public, but at home, like to live stream a concert.
Yeah.
To be part of a live streamed concert. Let's say let's say Axis TV gets super into virtual reality concerts, and I can put this thing on
and walk around
because they make these cameras now that are
360.
a sphere, right?
Yeah,
so I can actually walk around the
Coachella.
concert. Yeah, and then I don't have to be there with all those other humans.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. Now, what about? Yeah. Okay. Well, I have to think about that. Yeah,
I would dig that. I would dig that actually. I would totally go to Coachella
my question about
virtually.
dictating.
Oh, right. Sorry.
When do you dictate into your phone? When do you not? Like if you're at home and nobody's there, you'll dictate into it.
Yeah.
But if there's people at your house and people around at a cafe,
I still do.
You'd still do it.
I don't. I truly have no shame in my game because it's fast.
Is it?
It's super efficient.
I think
sometimes I start to type something. Plus, if I'm walking down the street, it's way safer for me to be talking to my phone and speaking my child makes fun of me all the time, actually, because I'll dictate something and he'll shout like exclamation point, because he's so used to me like dictating punctuation.
It's a dictating bomb.
He punctuation bombs.
A punctuation bomb.
Dictation. Anyway.
Dictation bomb. Yeah, there's something there. I did for a while do it when, like, if I'm stopped at a light and I got to tell my wife I'm going to be late, pull up the SMS and just say, I'm going to be late. And it does seem to work.
Oh, absolutely. But Siri's not great. The problem with Siri is that Siri tries to route through the Bluetooth all the time.
Right. It tries to go to the server to check the words,
and tries to go to the server to check the words.
It doesn't do it local, which Drag and Dictate, when I bought Drag and Dictate, I used it for a little while, and then I realized I'm just a faster typer. But when I would speak to Drag and Dictate and watch it get the words perfect, and it could do like continuous dictation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Have you tried the Google dictation?
No, it does continuous?
Yeah.
Because that's the key. For people who don't know what the difference between these like voice recognition and continuous is, when you're doing continuous, it's processing in real time and you see the words coming up and you don't have to pause and wait for it to come back. For some reason, Siri makes you wait for the sentence to come back. It just kills the whole thing. I don't know why they do that.
And then sometimes it doesn't come back.
And then, because it's trying to go over the interwebs.
Right.
And why are we trying to go
I think Google might actually also be processing in the cloud, but it's just faster somehow.
Okay, let's talk about this other company that raised an absurd amount of money, Magic Leap. Magic Leap is, and I pulled it up on my screen here, like it's augmented reality, and you can put things in the real world when you look through glasses, I guess. And I always found augmented reality for the last X number of years to have almost no application except for, like we've talked about before, they raised $542 million. They must have something incredible.
What?
Yes.
Wow.
They raised $542 million. And this technology allows you to wear glasses or something, or look through your phone.
Usually your phone.
Usually you look through your phone and see things in the world that don't exist. So if we were walking around and you turned it on, you could put your @ handle above your head, or if we were at a party and it was like a dance, you could put your marital status, or you're single, I guess. You could have like a little notation on your shirt or something, or whatever it is. Or you're walking around a museum and it shows you, background information on the painting, or you're walking through a city and it tells you what companies are in that building, all that kind of really interesting augmented stuff. But the only use of augmented reality have been these like really weird, like maids and figures that the Japanese use, and you look through your webcam and then you look at your computer and you can see like, oh my God, there's like a little, French maid on my desk.
There are several companies that have been doing this. I interviewed one.
Furniture, right?
No, but just for storytelling out in the real world.
Oh, really?
I interviewed one for my CNET show, and I've been Googling because I've been trying to think of the name of it. But it's somewhat similar to Magic Leap, but you're out in the world and you have this app and you hold it up on a certain corner and you see Iron Man there. Or you hold it up, there are certain landmarks around San Francisco that would have sort of extra information. And then beacons, I just wrote an article about this actually. Beacons are starting to enable this. Like, people are really interested in this idea of the virtual overlay on top of the real world.
Right.
So if you're So I talked to a company that's installing a beacon system in these gardens, this Royal Gardens in London. 300-acre garden, no Wi-Fi, but they have these low-power Bluetooth beacons all over the garden. So as you're walking through, you hold up your phone, and it's like a little holographic image of Darwin reading from his diary about these plants in this Royal Botanical Garden. And so that to me, that's like the, I don't want to wear glasses for that, but if it's a contained experience, or I'm walking around San Francisco getting like a virtual tour as I go with a tablet or something like that, I think that there's a really cool opportunity to kind of give you contextual, location-aware information about the world around you that's digital, but I'm definitely not going to put glasses on for it, just to make that clear now.
The most interesting, we had something at the launch conference years and years ago called Tonchi, which was like allowing people to leave messages and annotate around the real world, which was kind of cool. And then there was another one that we had at the launch festival that would let you take, it was last year, I forgot the name of it, but you would take your iPad and say, I want to build shelves right behind you at that wall. And you'd say, I want to have 5 shelves. And it would draw the 5 shelves, and you'd be able to see the 5-shelf thing in your apartment. And you'd be like, I want to make it a little bit longer. It's like, oh, that's too long. It's over the couch. Let's pull it back a little bit.
Right.
And then you hit print, and they go make the shelves and send them to you.
See, that's awesome.
You never had to take out the tape measure. So that was like a really cool application. But the best futuristic one I saw was kids in the back of a car and the side windows in the car, as you were driving, were putting notations on the buildings and things around you. So it wouldn't put on the windshield, obviously, unless it was very subtle, but the windshield could put Starbucks, and you would see the Starbucks, like floating across the windshield. Like you see way up there, and then it's like coming, and then it went by, and you look in the rearview mirror, you see it. You look in the rear window, you see it.
I totally want my heads-up display to be like, there's a Starbucks over here. Yeah. Because I'm always like, where the hell's a Starbucks?
Right, exactly. And it's like you have to press buttons to find it and get in a car accident.
I mean, I don't know what this you do. And so if it was if it was a beacon oriented, I was like, always be on the lookout for a Starbucks phone or tell my Starbucks app, show me on my heads-up display whenever there's a Starbucks coming. Like, I actually think there's some really cool applications here that are pretty practical and fun. Yeah. I don't know if they are the little animal in your hand.
The little animal in your hand is super cute.
It's adorable. But but clearly they must be working on something more.
I guess this is the thing about technology. Is one of the things I've learned, especially like with the investing thing, is like sometimes you have to suspend disbelief and invest or just believe when the use cases are not clear. Mm-hmm. Like there's no clear use case, but the technology is interesting. Sometimes you just have to.
Well, having been the person who said absolutely no one needs an iPad.
Oh, you said that?
I'm cool with that. Yeah. Although I actually maintain that even now, that's totally true.
You know what? You're right in a way.
No one needs
an iPad, technically. They need food and water. But you know what? You know why, actually, in a way, you're right. If you look at the statistics of any app company or any web company, and I know them internally, having been investors in different ones, like who spent a lot of money building a tablet app. Like literally, we're going to stop working on the smartphone app. Yeah. We're going to put everybody on the tablet app back in the early days of like the iPad, 4 months, 5 months, and whatever. The smartphones are not as sexy as these. And then 2%, 3% utilization on tablets. Yep. 98% on smartphones. So the tablet that's with you, your large smartphone or whatever form factor, you're right that it's winning the massive traffic. And I actually thought like maybe because I have the iPad mini, but I stopped using because I got the iPhone Plus. 6 Plus. I was like, maybe I'll buy that new big iPad. Yeah. And I went and I looked at it and I was like, yeah, I have no use for this.
Oh, I own an iPad, but I never touch it. It's my child's TV.
It is like that, yes.
Like, I mean, I literally never touch it. It is not. And I bought an iPad mini for like a video shoot for work and then ended up with it. And now I'm like, why do I have this stupid thing? I never use it because I do everything on my phone. Anyway.
Yeah. So Yahoo is going to replace Google for search on Firefox.
Really?
Yeah, so it looks like Marissa won the deal from Google to be the default search engine. Now, this is a lot of backstory on this because people don't know this, but Firefox, which was previously Netscape, it's the open source version of Netscape. So AOL bought Netscape, and then Ted Leonsis and I think Mitch Kapoor and a couple of other people were able to get Netscape out of AOL and open source it as a project into the Mozilla Foundation. The Mozilla Foundation then did a deal with Google to make it the default search engine and got whatever percentage of that revenue. That percentage of revenue turned into tens of millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. So now you have a company called Firefox, which is a nonprofit, that was making so much money that they didn't know how to qualify it as a nonprofit anymore and so it was a big issue. So there's like, it turns out there's like the structure of the company, and I'm not going to get this exactly right, but there's like a for-profit company or a nonprofit that licenses it, the Mozilla code to this company, so that one company can be like a for-profit, one's a nonprofit, because so much money was coming in. And I don't know what the last number was, but it might have been $75 million a year, $100 million a year coming from Google. And then Google absolutely covertly built the Chrome browser and stabbed Firefox in the back.
I see.
And so there's a backstory of a little bit of animosity there. So now Yahoo, Marissa leaves Google to go to Yahoo. And steals it back, right? So you get this whole like weird, like I don't
love this stuff.
Yeah, I don't even know like if any of it is even like consciously coming into the deal, but I guess I could infer that this must be some history here of all this. I mean, who knows? Maybe Marissa did the Google search deal with them to begin with. Maybe she greenlit the Chrome project. Who knows? But anyway, this is a super big deal because it is going to drive a good number of searches there. But now Google maintains Firefox search outside of the United States. What do you think of this? What do you think of the browser wars in general, I guess? And then what do you think of Yahoo currently and going into 2015?
Oh my gosh. Those
like
are
two
extremely large questions. Yeah. I know, totally. Well, that's funny that you just answered the question of why any company wants to build a browser, because that I think was a question for a lot of years. Is like, why are companies doing browsers? Yeah. And it turns out it's to make money on search, which is kind of fascinating all by itself. I'm kind of curious about current usage because at some point Chrome's
number one now.
It's number one now, right?
Yeah, I believe it's number one now. But it's definitely it's either
which was like, I mean, Firefox didn't just get stabbed in the back; they got like run over and murdered by this
they got like bled to death, like slowly bled to death every year, 10 points or something.
Yep.
But some people still use it.
Well, Chrome is still not very standards, or maybe it's too standards compliant. Everybody gets in this big argument about it, but I still run into a lot of problems on Chrome, and a lot of legacy tools, like content management tools or things, will only support Firefox or Safari. Not many of them mention IE anymore.
Interesting.
Anyway.
So, and then on to Marissa.
But on to Marissa.
Yeah. What are your thoughts there? I mean, we're a couple of years in now, and I guess there's a lot of talk about the Alibaba stuff, which I don't know is super important. It's more like on the product side.
I feel
like do they come to the New York Times and say, review this product? Like, do they have products for you to review? Do you ever review stuff? Or is it not stuff coming out?
Yeah, that's just it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I hear from Yahoo. I think maybe actually I've heard from them once or twice, although I am not the beat reporter, and Vin Dugal does a great job covering Yahoo and covering Facebook and Twitter. But I hear from them sometimes, and it is rarely about a product. And that's what's so interesting. What's been so interesting to me about the Marissa Mayer reign at Yahoo has nothing to do with her pictures in Vogue, and everything to do with the fact that Yahoo's had this long time schism, right? Are we a content company or a product company?
Yeah.
And Ross Levinson took them in the direction of being a content company, and they said, this is what we're doing. This is totally what we're doing. We're all over being a content company.
Right.
Wait. Content is really hard to do and expensive, and it's hard to sell to advertisers at scale, which is why we ended up having to buy Brightroll. So we're going to be a product company, and that's what Marissa is all about.
Yeah.
And then Marissa has made a bunch of content deals and launched new editorial products like Yahoo Tech and brought on Katie Couric.
Right. I think Katie Couric and then Community, they're doing that TV show.
And then they're doing that TV show Community. Yeah. And then they brought Brightroll to start to sell video advertising at scale. And so it's a little confusing, like that a person who supposedly is this big product guru has yet to do very much with the product at all. I think the only product I can think of that they've really put a lot of time and energy into is that really pretty weather app.
The weather app is very pretty. And they came out that Yahoo News Digest, which is like...
Oh, that's right. Is that the Katie Couric one? That's the one she anchors, right? They have a news thing.
Oh, no, that's a different news thing.
Oh, okay.
They have a Yahoo News one, Yahoo News Digest that came from the Summary thing. I know because people bring it up when I talk about Inside. And it's basically like, here's the top 10 stories of the day. If you read them, like it checks off each one like in a gamification thing. And you're like, you're now smart. You did all 10 stories today. You can move on. I don't think it's super meaningful or anything. But, it is interesting that I thought... she was off to a good product start when we saw like the weather get, things were getting released. And it seems like now I think maybe she's being distracted by so much managing of the corporate issues, the Alibaba stock, and all that stuff that, how much time could she be allowed to spend on product?
And some of just the sort of social stuff, like it feels like I had one actual staffer describe it to me as saying that the leadership strategy at Yahoo seems to be Marissa goes to a party.
Wow.
Like has a great conversation with someone, and then that's the thing that they're doing from then
on.
Yeah,
that's not good.
And that's not good. And I don't know if that's true. I mean, that's obviously the one employee talking, but that's kind of the sense that they're having now is like, we don't know what we're doing, and it's certainly not moving in a strong product direction.
What should they do? Have you thought about that at all? Like, here's like a definitive roadmap. Like, cut this stuff and focus on that.
I mean, why wouldn't you do product, right? That seemed like a good way to go.
Yeah.
I thought. Because
Viable.
it's viable. You have products that people love. I mean, you know, the big thing that I hear that Marissa did was the weather app, which is beautiful, but also like, oh, she ruined Yahoo Mail. Like, don't mess with Yahoo Mail. Make Yahoo Mail awesome, because you know who doesn't have a really great focus on their core product sometimes? Google.
Yeah.
They are vulnerable in the product department. They really are. Like, Hangouts, give me a break.
Yeah.
They have drifted.
Yeah.
I mean, Hangouts is truly god-awful.
Yeah.
Like, if you're Yahoo, you could come into the business.
I don't understand why people use that Google Hangouts product. Like, my developers use it sometimes. They pull me into it. And it's like, it sounds like you're on a CB.
Yep.
I'm like, with all the bandwidth they have, they can't get clear connections and sound. Like, I'm using GoToMeeting. Because I only use GoToMeeting, not just because they sponsored the program in the past, but because it actually like is its own dedicated bandwidth, and it just works flawlessly, and it's got HD and everything.
I feel like if Yahoo, like if they really doubled down and said, we're going to go platform, we're going to go communications platform, that they could come into businesses as a viable Google alternative. Businesses are concerned about Google's privacy. European businesses are very concerned about doing business with Google. What if Yahoo said, we can do corporate mail? What if they said, we can do corporate communications? What if they said, we're going to repurpose Yahoo Instant Messenger, which people use and love and has awesome emoticons, which Hangouts does not.
Yes, the emoticons are great.
And they said, we're going to repurpose that as a business tool. Like, we're going to do product. I just think that would be really interesting. But I think content is always like sexy and distracting in that.
Yeah. Also, if you're going to do content, you've got to do it at scale, and it has to be a singular focus. So if you were to make...
expensive.
It's expensive in a way, but at the scale they're at, you know, Reed Hastings is making it work. Bezos is making it work with Amazon Prime. Like, it can be made to work.
Right.
Of course, it's not easy, but you know, if they want to make that work, you need to cut like a lot of the superfluous stuff and say, we are doubling and tripling down and going 10x on video. We're going to compete with YouTube over here, and we're going to compete with the mid-market here with original stuff, and we're going to compete with Netflix here. You know, these other products are not being deprecated, but they're going to be maintained. But the whole company's focus is, we're taking on Netflix and YouTube, and it's going to be and Yahoo screen. And when you come to Yahoo, you're going to get great videos.
And I think that is just a culture. That's a culture thing. Like, Yahoo culturally and historically has never been willing to make the call about their focus.
Pick one thing.
Yep.
Pick one thing.
Pick 6 things. Just don't have 60.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I think that was, to Google's credit, they when they launched Gmail, it was like, they really thought about it. Like, we're going to launch Gmail. Let's please make sure it's good. You know, like, and they rolled it out very slowly because they didn't want to screw up
Mail. That's a big deal.
Yeah, and they didn't want to screw up the search engine either. They're like, we don't want to split our focus here, but we'll do 2 things. Now it's kind of funny to think about Google doing only 2 things at the time. All right, listen, this has been a great program. Sorry if it was completely self-referential, but, you know, it is the biggest news story of the week, and this is the news program. Molly, you were great to have here for it, you know, to be my check and to, you know, to hold my feet to the fire. I think we did it very well.
Thank
you for that.
I was happy to be here.
And Benedict Evans, oh, God, we missed you. I'm dying to get Benedict Evans on the program. The guy's a smart cat.
I know. I was really looking forward to that.
I know.
And he has like a cool British accent too, right?
I think he's got the British accent. He's got the cool glasses. He's got the cool metrics. I mean, he's like a cool dude. And I'm beginning to think that he doesn't exist actually in the real world. I think it's a stock...
He's a Twitter bot.
I think it's like a stock photo and a voiceover actor. And I think Mark Andreessen is just writing a script. And like, I think that's what Mark does. Mark is like doing his Twitter. And then he's also playing the role of Benedict Evans.
You know what this is? This is process journalism.
This is like, process journalism.
If I tell the world that he's a bot, he'll be forced to reveal himself.
I'm floating it, you know? It's a 0.001% chance. But if I get that right, it would be just amazing for me. I would be like a Nostradamus over here. All right, thanks so much, Molly Wood. Everybody follow at Molly Wood and read her in the New York Times. Yes. And thanks to Moo and Wistia. Thank you for sponsoring the program. And if you're a fan of the show and you got this far into it, you should just pull over and stop the car and say thank you at Wistia, thank you at Moo. And thanks to the team, Jacob, Jackie, and everybody else. And we'll see you next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye.